Does the panel feel about the increase in support for parties such as Reform UK in Scotland?
Thank you. First Minister John Swinney today called for a summit to address the rise of the far right, and he singled out Nigel Farage, saying in response to the situation at the moment, people are finding attractiveness in the politics of Farage and the far right. So, John Curtis, why are people voting or saying they're going to vote for reform in Scotland?
Well, of course, it's not unique to Scotland. It's happening across Britain as a whole. Indeed, support for reform in Scotland is currently running at about somewhere between 13 and 17% in the opinion polls. It's running at 26% across the UK as a whole, and the Reform are now currently marginally the most popular party. Why? Well, I mean, I'll give you a very short version. Number one is that, the UK is facing very difficult situations. I mean, we've already heard in the audience this evening, there are two existential questions that a lot of people inside the UK at the moment ask themselves. The first is, can I afford to feed my kids? Mm-hmm. And the second is, if I fall ill, will the NHS be able to deal with me in a timely manner? And we are talking about, as a society, north and south of the border, we are deeply pessimistic about our economy, we are deeply pessimistic about our public services, and we are therefore more broadly deeply pessimistic about the state of our country. That's point one. Point two is, it's not unique to our mainstream parties. If you look at what's happened across Europe in general, mainstream parties of the centre have struggled to try to address really the post-financial crisis world, where all countries are struggling to develop economies. But it happens to be true, I think, and I'm going to mete it out politically evenly here. One of Keir Starmer's, Keir Starmer was brilliant yesterday when he had to come up with a tough decision. But what Keir Starmer cannot do is optimism. He cannot come up with it. He doesn't have a narrative to explain how he's going to take this country forward. Rishi Sunak didn't have a narrative for how he's going to take the country forward. Ed Davey, brilliant swimming during the election campaign, but didn't have a story about how he would take the country forward. And frankly, John Swinney doesn't have that same ability that Alex Salmond and Nicola Sturgeon had. Nigel Farage, in contrast, whatever you think of him, he is utterly brilliant at doing narrative. And in particular, he is very, very good at articulating the concerns that people have about public services, about the economy, and yes, also about immigration. And the problem we now have is we have a Conservative Party who, the one message last July was anybody but the Conservatives, but we now have a UK Labour government which very, very rapidly has lost the confidence of the public so far as its ability to handle this country's conditions are concerned. And as a result, there is a space for Farage.
We don't have Reform on the panel this evening. They will join us in a few weeks' time, but we do have Reform supporters, I know, in the audience this evening, so I'd love to hear from you on this. Mike O'Mara, what responsibility must our politicians take for the lack of leadership and the lack of optimism that John was talking about there that has led to this situation?
Well, I think it is a big challenge. I think if I can say that John touched on it, but some of this is an international phenomenon. So, right across Europe, there's a rise of the right. And I think that in those regards, I certainly agree with some of what the First Minister said today. We see the AfD in Germany, surging in elections just this last week.
Do you welcome this summit then? Are you going to be part of that?
Happy to participate in any form of engagement that is about making sure that we can reduce division, that we can reduce hate, that we can make sure that we can come together. I would say that in the context of reform, I do think John's right. At a time of real disruption and difficulty, a country that for the last decade and a half has really struggled to adjust to its place in the world, to have an economy that works for people. People generally feel the economy doesn't work for them. That's why, in part, the Labour government's come in and said we need to raise the minimum wage, we need to increase people's protection in their workplaces, we need to put money in people's pockets wherever we can to try and rebalance that. But it is really challenging in that era of very low growth to actually do that and make sure that you can command the confidence of the marketplaces and all that stuff. That we have to make sure that we can get it done. So it's a complex set of challenges, but I would say that we do have to recognise that people are, look at the health services in this area have been, stripped away, centralised, pulled away, and people are looking at it and saying, what is in my community? What am I getting? We don't have, maternity services here in Inverclyde anymore. All this stuff has been pulled away from people. People need to feel that they're getting something back for what they put in. Taxes have gone up.
In Germany, there's a so-called firewall to try and keep certain parties out of government. Are you saying, do we need that here? I mean, would you in any circumstances cooperate in reforming government in Scotland?
No. No, I don't think so, because I think this is a case of shared values as much as is about kind of policy platforms. I don't see at the moment that there's any place to say that we would.
They've said they'd support Anna Sarwar to be First Minister. They'd work with you.
Anna Sarwar's been really clear that he would never do a deal on that basis.
Okay, lady with the glasses down here. Yeah, on you go.
I think you had made an excellent point about the optimism and personality. And again, the point about people are down and we need someone to blame for this. And it's really easy to blame someone who doesn't come from here. My accent is plain. I grew up in the States, but I have been here for 20 odd years. I was born here. I am Scottish. The idea of trying to get someone else to blame when realistically it's about the proportion and giving out to everyone who needs it. As politicians in power, you need to find a message that actually resonates with those people. You can't just keep going on the back foot.
Well, Malcolm Alford, what do you think about this summit? Will the Scottish Conservatives be part of it?
I usually speak to Russell Finlay about that. I'm afraid I don't know the answer to that question.
What do you think? Should they?
Well, I think that at the end of the day, everybody wants the country to come together. In my opinion, what we need to do is create wealth and create prosperity in this country. That's what we need to really, really focus on, right? And I just think that's where we need to really. And one of the things,
I'm
major.
sure Reform would agree with that as well.
But what's happened here is both the mainstream parties have let down the electorate. That's why the Conservatives got a right kicking in the general election last year, and that's why the Labour Party is now losing support amongst the population. Reform are coming into that and saying it doesn't matter which of these parties work. There's something not working here. Everybody agrees that things are not working properly in this country. Ergo, the status quo needs to change. There needs to be a change in narrative about how do we change our prospects in this country. And the major parties need to work out how to do that. Otherwise, reform will be a real threat because they don't actually have a plan. They're filling the vacuum, as referenced by John Curtis. They're filling the vacuum, but they don't actually have a plan. So the main parties have to get back together with a plan. And my view is that the Conservative Party need to get back to being Conservatives and need to grow wealth. We're not. People don't feel wealthy.
We're getting tight in time,
in the country.
Malcolm. I want to try and understand for us all tonight what this summit is for. Stuart McMillan, what are you constructing out of this? Is it a firewall to try and keep Farage and Reform out of Scotland? Is that the plan?
It certainly seems to be a proposal to bring people together. I mean, I consider this area.
Bring people together or keep someone out?
Well, it'll be a bit of both, I'd imagine.
Because he's coming up.
Fairness.
He said tonight that he's coming to Scotland.
Yeah, no, indeed. But so I'd imagine it's a bit of both, to be quite frank. Right? But, I mean, I consider this constituency. You leave this building, in Inverclyde and Scotland, but particularly Inverclyde, over 600,000 people left the shores of Greenock to go to other parts of the world. Scotland is a country of immigration and also emigration. And the tartan of our country is not one colour of white. The tartan of our tartan, the colour of our tartan is multicoloured. Now, I very much welcome the fact that Scotland is more diverse now. I very much welcome the fact that Inverclyde is more diverse as compared to the situation that we had some years ago. And I actually welcome people coming into the country.
All right, we're tight for time here. I want to bring Ros into this. You'll be part of this summit, I'm guessing. It's open to trade unionists and civic society.
We'll absolutely be part of this summit. I think we have to call what's happening in our society for what it is. We are seeing a rise of really dangerous, extremist, right-wing politicians who are coming into some of our poorest, most working-class communities who quite rightly are decent working people who want a fair share of the pie. And what I would say to all of our political parties is, use it in the last chance saloon. If you don't start delivering for working people, then they are going to turn elsewhere, and hell menges if they do. But that means you have to start delivering decent housing, decent jobs, get people's bills down for their electricity and their energy and start making the changes. And to do that, you're going to have to be bold, because just doing the same old isn't working.
Okay.
And if you do that, you will allow fascism into this country.
Gentleman with the glasses, on you go.
For the last 150 years, there's been a cosy relationship. The Labour and the Tory. If we don't get in this time, you get in, you'll get in maybe for 14 days. And if you make a mess of it, we'll let the other lot in. They're not very good either, but you need to give the guys a break. And it's been too cosy for too long, and Scotland has suffered. Nigel comes along and says, look, I'm going to expose these two guys for what they are, parties, charlatans. Okay. That's all they want in. Just to get in, get a wage, benefits and all the rest.
He said he's coming to Scotland in the next few weeks, so I'm sure we'll hear more.